This is Mark Gunn Media.
Hit it!
Welcome to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. I'm your host, Mark Gunn. The views expressed on this program are those of the host and guests and not necessarily reflective of anyone or any entity associated with this broadcast. This episode is brought to you by the Centers for Disease Control.
The best way to protect yourself from 2019 novel coronavirus is to avoid being exposed to the virus. Additionally, there are preventative actions that you can take to protect yourself and your family from the spread of respiratory viruses that can make you sick. These include stay home if you're sick, cover your cough, and wash your hands.
For more information, visit coronavirus.gov. That's coronavirus.gov. All right, you're listening to Gunshot Straight from the Hip. This is a very special episode. We are coming to you from Roots 101, the African American Museum here on Main Street in Louisville, Kentucky. One of Kentucky's best kept secrets. I'm here with the owner and curator, Lamont Collins. How you doing, man?
I'm blessed.
Good deal. So as I walked in, because this is a 3-story facility so far, I walked in and got on the elevator. The first thing I was greeted with was some beautiful African pieces right at the elevator.
Correct.
And I come into your office and I'm looking around, and you'll see some of what we're talking about on a video that I'm producing for this podcast. Some artifacts from basically our history here in America and our history which began before slavery. So let's talk about the genesis of the museum. How did you get the idea? And how did you get started with this whole process?
Well, I've always been an avid collector from the time I was 10 years old. My mother was working a part-time job at the airport, and she would get autographs of athletes. Mm-hmm. And she made a point to get artist Gilmore. We had the Kentucky Colonels at the time. Yeah. And I just thought it was so cool. And being an athlete myself, mm-hmm. collected them, but just having them. And then all of a sudden I said, hey, there's something about this. And I was like 10 or 12 years old. And then I started collecting anything that had black on it. Okay. Magazines, Ebony, Jet.
Right.
Because the image meant so much to me at that time. So over the years, I've always bought and collected, and every house I ever had a museum in the bottom of it. Mm-hmm. So my kids were raised seeing statues and things like that. It was Black History Month. I would go to school for them and things like that. Right. So just loved it. And one particular day I was listening to NPR radio. Mm-hmm. Love NPR radio. And I'm listening to NPR, and there's a brother on there by the name of Owen Z out of California. Okay. Owen Z had a African American museum in Compton or somewhere in the inner city. Right. And Urban Renewal came through and moved him out. So he was talking about how Urban Renewal moved him out and the price of starting a new museum. And in the process, he had a four-stage cancer survivor. Mm-hmm. And he talked about he had 12 railroad cars of history in his backyard in the Mojave Desert. Yeah. 4 railroad cars. So we're in the car, turned to my wife and said, look, I'm going to call him. There's no way you're going to get him on the phone, you know. She went in Kroger's, came back out of Kroger's, guess what?
She had him on the phone.
I had him on the phone. So I'm trying to say, hey, I'm Lamont Collins in Louisville, Kentucky. I always wanted to do a museum. Mm-hmm. Love to work with you. And before I got it out, he starts crying. He cries, I start crying. He said the Lord was going to tell him someone was going to call about his passion. Right. And his passion would move to Louisville, Kentucky. Wow. So he had 3 million artifacts. Now you'll see the artifacts in our building that are out of sight already. Mm-hmm. But when you combine 3 million that he has, our inventory is strong as any major museum in the country. Wow. And so when you see that, and I think why people love what we're doing, and the reason I did it is that it's from an image standpoint. Too many young kids or even older people don't understand our history. Mm-hmm. So what I tell young people is that first it's a game changer that we're on Museum Row in Louisville, Kentucky. Right. Telling that story 365 days a year. But in that story, I start off this way. We are descendants of kings and queens that were enslaved in America. Mm-hmm. We're descendants of kings and queens enslaved in America. That's a mind changer, game changer for young people to look in the mirror and see that they're descendants of royalty. Mm-hmm. And not just slaves, which they've been told. So that's the whole premise of starting this museum. And I always say, if anybody follows my Facebook, Instagram, I always say legacies matter.
Right.
Because legacies do matter. And if we can instill the importance of who we are and what we can leave to this country or to our family, that's what it's all about. So I won't be here, but what I have is a 500-year plan.
Right. For just your legacy being, in part, this museum and the education from your family to continue to generations that the generations that are to come.
That are coming. So it's not like a regular business plan where I'm trying to get through 5 years. I'm trying to get through I want to be just like we're sitting beside Fraser Museum. We have the options for this building and 2 buildings beside us. Just imagine if we got the support we could get, what mecca we could make on Main Street in Louisville, Kentucky.
Which brings me to my next point, because when you reached out to me just recently, in light of everything that's going on with America, the protests against police brutality, right here in Louisville with the Breonna Taylor protests and the David McAtee protests, there seems to be a collective come to Jesus meeting, come to Yahweh, come to Allah meeting among a lot of white folks. And one of the things that you have said, and lots of other black scholars and intelligentsia have said, part of the problem, to paraphrase a popular book, is not only the miseducation of the American Negro, but the miseducation of the American white person.
Exactly.
So according to white America, our history here didn't begin until 1619.
Correct.
So one of the things and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this particular episode, because this is a way for them to shake off the load of crap that they've been brainwashed with all of their lives. Come to this museum and get a real piece of history. Like right now, there was a black bag on the floor that you told me to pick up. And in that bag, so I've opened it and I'm looking at chains. Tell me what these are.
Those particular chains came from Ghana. Those chains are more than 400 years old. You're looking at 3 different sets. One set is a set that goes around the neck and around the wrist. The other set goes around the ankles, and the other set goes around the ankles also. And what's so special about these chains, even though they're 400 years old, is the pure heaviness of the chains. That whole set's 35 pounds.
All right, so I'm holding 35 pounds
of chains
worth of. One of our ancestors were bound in these. Several of our ancestors were bound in these. And I will have video and photos of these chains, but I'm telling you right now, as I'm looking at these and I'm feeling the weight, my heart is beating out of my chest. The last time I felt like this is I went to the African American Museum in Cincinnati, and they had a replica of some slave quarters. And in those quarters, they had these beams where they had these types of chains hanging. And I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the fact that these are 400 years old and they are as solid as the day that they were made, that in and of itself, metaphorically, just it kind of explains the strength of the bondage that we were held under. And like I said, you're going to see pictures of these along with this story, but I'm going to go ahead and put them down for right now, because it's to look at that and to feel that it's emotionally overwhelming.
It is.
It really is. That is a direct link to a member of our, or several members of our family, of our collective family.
Right.
Now, some of the other pieces that you have here in your office, there's a piece off to my left that I'm looking at that I've only seen in photographs and in documentaries. This is one of the restroom signs that were all over the country during Jim Crow. Restrooms, white and colored. And this was from the L&N building?
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 1929.
Correct.
And then there's a whites only restroom from a delicatessen.
Mm-hmm.
Also from that time period, right next to it, and again, you'll see photos of these, there is a colored entrance only sign that's sitting there. When you acquired these pieces, because again, I'm getting a heaviness in my chest when I look at these. Mm-hmm. When you first acquired these pieces, how did you feel? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a feeling you can't forget when you see something like that for the first time.
It's not, and I just like you felt, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt it in a way that the story has to be told.
Right.
See, that's the difference. When I see history, I feel it has to be told,
mm-hmm.
and then when you tell it, that's when the healing process starts.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, those chains you touched,
yeah,
those chains are more relevant today than they were yesterday. And what do I mean by that?
Yes.
Is that the economics and the structure of America are in those chains. Everything that touches black people are in those chains. From education or lack of education at the time, mm-hmm. from just the basis of the economy of America are in those chains. From cotton, just think about it. America founded the economic growth of cotton
mm-hmm.
in those chains is astronomical. When you understand the story,
right?
Is that when the cotton gin, when they did cotton, it took one person 10 hours to pick one cotton plant. 10 hours. So when they created the cotton gin, was able to expand the production mm-hmm. to get more slaves. Here's what America did. This is what people don't understand why when we talk about reparations and things like that, how deep the economy is entrenched in slavery. Mm-hmm. So here we are, we're picking cotton that put us in, then the Americas, I mean, the government's involved in the process.
Right.
So they need more plants. They need more places to grow. So the actual cotton only can grow for 3 years or it tears up the land.
Right.
So America gives land to white landowners so they can be rich and have slaves, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're giving land all over the country to white Americans to get rich. But here's so crazy about it. If they couldn't finance it, America financed it for them.
And these are the land grant colleges that were talked about that a lot of people don't know about, because basically white folks were paid through land in order to help finance the crop. Mm-hmm. There's a brilliant book by the author Tim Wise called White Like Me. He talks about this in that book, so mm-hmm. that's highly recommended reading. Mm-hmm. So, and this also speaks to that 400-year economic head start that white America has over us.
Right.
And it started with those land grants.
Right. Okay. And then you had the slave bonds.
Right.
Where they were municipal bonds that were sold all over Europe and France, where they financed the slaves. Mm-hmm. Not the land, but the slaves, because the slaves are more valuable than the land.
Right.
And go, okay, so America is financing slaves. And then when we think about when the banks were too big to fail, mm-hmm. when cotton started not to make money, the government gave up all the assets to people that they didn't take them away. So they were too big to fail. So what they did was, instead of calling in the loans, they just let people walk away with the land and the wealth. So that was the institutional welfare back then, mm-hmm. because the banks were too big to fail because of cotton, because of slavery. Right. So when you look at the chains, as much as we think we're free from them, everything about them is still with us. everything. And what's so bad about it, just the idea of supremacy is based in that change. That we're better, and when we talk about history, we can blow supremacy out the water. When we talk about how we became the engineers before engineers, how we were the bulldozers before bulldozers,
right?
And we were the engineers before engineers got engineering degrees. So the basis of supremacy is straight out the window when you teach history. And so many of our white brothers think what they're learned is history.
Right.
And what they learned was a myth, not history. And that's why it's so hard for them to understand what's going on, because they've been mythically taught a lie from the time of birth.
Right. Tell you what, we're going to take a little bit of a pause here. We are with Lamont Collins here at the Roots 101 African American History Museum here in Louisville, Kentucky. More after this.
We know that we're asking Americans to do a lot right now. So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible to this virus.
A question I often get asked is, why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
Social distancing is really physical separation of people.
It's what we refer to when we ask people to stay at least 6 feet apart.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
We all have a role to play in preventing person-to-person spread of this disease, which can be deadly for vulnerable groups. For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
For downloads of this and past episodes and information about all the multimedia services we offer, log on to our website at www.markgunmedia.com. That's markgunmedia.com.
Welcome back to Gunshot Straight from the Hip. I am Mark Gunn, and we are at the Roots 101 African American History Museum with the owner and curator, Lamont Collins. We've been talking about some of the history as it relates to the protests that are going on now, kind of the second revolution when it comes to civil rights. And we're coming at this from an educational standpoint for white America. Because we've got a lot of people that are finally seeing what we've been telling them for over 400 years. It's manifested itself in the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. So you're able to see it, and it seems like this is the only time when people react. And this brings me back to the 1960s, when America saw water hoses and German shepherds being put on innocent black people. That's when they finally decided to act. So I'm trying to, in my head, and this is a question I'm going to openly ask, why is it that something that we have been telling you consistently for more than the 59 years that I've been alive, twice in this country's history have white people been moved enough to actually want to do something, or at least say something? So in asking that question, one of the things we're also hearing is, what can we do? What can we do? One school of thought, and this is the prevailing education that the prevailing thought that most black Americans have. It is not our job to tell you what you need to do. We have been telling you for decades, for years, hundreds of years. You haven't been listening. The information has always been out there. Get your ass and go get it. This, in Louisville, Kentucky, this museum is one of the places to start, because it not only it gives you the history of black people in America, but we go well beyond that. So contrary to the lie that you've been told, black history began long before we were brought here in 1619. And speaking of which, just a little local Louisville history, one of the things that I'm looking at your desk now and this is so apropos because a lot of this is involving the Louisville Metro Police Department. You got a photo of the colored division of the Louisville Metro Police Department from 1937. How did you acquire this, and what do you know about the history of the?
Well, the history is they couldn't lock up white people.
Really?
The only they could do is lock up black people. So really, they were created to keep the Negroes in line, even though very respectful men in the community for what they did.
Right.
But it wasn't designed to be a police force to lock up white people. It was to imprison black people or keep black people in control. But in the same hand, they also monitor anything other police would do, crime and whatever. But it was not to enforce the law on all people, just black people.
Right. Right.
So that's the history. That came from a family member of Huggins, last name of Huggins, locally. And one of the most famous detectives or policemen in there is a guy named Jesse Taylor, that people talk about for centuries about how tough he was as a police officer. I mean, it's all kind of, but he's in that particular picture, Jesse Taylor, who's a legend as far as police officers in Louisville. But when you mention history and what I try to explain to anybody that comes through the door is that under the current president we have today, you would think that America never came together. America never was great for black people. It was never, it might have been better, but was never great. But at the atmosphere that the new president has and how he changes the narrative of stories and change it to fit what white America wants it to be, is that what I find with the museum is an opportunity for me or for us to pull the wound back of America. And when we pull the wound back, we can treat it with history.
Right.
The true facts of history. How when America was at its best is when we all worked together. What do I mean by? I mean, the Quakers worked with us, abolitionists worked with us, Indians worked with us. Later, the Jewish community worked with us.
Right.
The Catholic community was sending young black people to college. So when America was at its best, when the 60s happened, is when, 50s, 60s, when white America said, hey, we had enough. And then you mentioned about what we see today, what inspired that today. I think a lot of that had to do with white kids started going to school with black kids.
Right.
Black kids became part of their families. It used to be, when Willie becomes part of your family, now you got to deal with Willie.
Right.
You see, and then your question is, white America, which Willie am I dealing with?
Right.
That's the only issue they're dealing with is who's my daughter marrying or who's my son's marrying. So it's a different America than the 60s because the melting pot of families has changed so many dynamics. Now it changes dynamics at the table, dinner table.
Right.
It changes dynamics on where your kids going to school. So all this has changed, so it's a different America now, even though supremacy, the myth of supremacy is still there, racism is still there. It's a different way of dealing with it now. Even though we're going to the streets and we're doing the things that we did in 63, 68, because that's what we know to agitate and protest.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing. But it has to come past agitation and we have to get now into the real deal, the economics.
Right.
The opportunities.
Politics
of it. So many, they throwing up diversity training. Well, what's diversity training mean if the person doing diversity training don't even understand your struggle?
Right.
That's crazy. That's an oxymoron that you have all these white women or white men running diversity and they never ever knew the history that they're dealing with. They don't know the history of Africa. They don't know the history of America. But so how are you going to deal with diversity? Because you don't know. And then if I hit you with diversity, you're going to climb up because you can't explain it. So now we're at a standstill. And I think that's what we're seeing is that miseducation, which you mentioned, and I mention all the time, it's the miseducation of white folks. And I'm here for the miseducation of white folks and the re-education of black folks.
Right.
That's my mission.
Because there's a lot of stuff that we've had to learn outside of traditional American education. I remember as a younger person and in my career as a radio personality, having traveled all over the country. And to your point about blended families, I've got an adopted Sicilian grandmother, and I've got a family of Samoans that adopted me years ago. So I get the blended family experience, and I wouldn't trade those folks for anything in the world. With the education or re-education and the evolution of this museum, one of the odd things that I'm trying to wrap my head around, and it's based on the homework that I've done about this place. You are getting so much love from people outside of Louisville, Kentucky. What was it? Top 20 Architectural Digest. You've been featured in Forbes magazine,
Worth magazine.
What magazine? One of the top 20 museums in the country.
Opened in 2020, yes.
And nothing out of the city's hierarchy here in Louisville.
Nothing.
Nothing from the mayor. Nothing from your councilwoman, Barbara Sexton Smith, who is right down the street. Nothing in the way of resources from the city of Louisville, who touts the Muhammad Ali Museum, which is wonderful. I love going there. The various breweries, distributors, and bourbon houses that we have here. The Fraser Museum. What's the deal? Why? What's going on?
Well, I'm trying to figure that out. But what we do know is that Louisville is the fourth largest segregated city in the country, and we got to realize why that is. As far as getting traditional government to step up, I think people think it has to be certain people to do certain things. I think if someone doesn't, nobody expected this to be on Museum Row. So
that's true.
That's if I put this anywhere else, it might have been a slam dunk. But when I put it in your neighborhood, it's a different story. But any major city would see the diamond that's in the woods, So my thing is to continue to tell our story, continue to tell the story of those that have not been supportive, and make them answer the reason why they haven't been supported. I know one time, even from our own black community, I heard somebody say, "Why do we need another museum?" That's crazy. And when I can look down Main Street and there's 30 other museums,
and nobody asked
that question.
Right.
No. And we asked that question of us. So if we're asking that question of us, surely white America's asking the same question. But we have enough stories to fill up 10,000 museums. But our mindset is if we only have one story to tell.
Right.
And that's crazy. Ali centers Ali's life.
That's his story.
That's his story. Our story is our story. How can we tell our story 365 days a year? That's a game changer.
Right.
When I met with Fraser, first thing I said to Fraser Museum, they'll tell you is that I'm here to tell a story 365 days a year. I'm not here to sharecrop my history with you.
Right.
I'm not here to be here February, Black Women's Month. No, 365 days a year. You can do what you do, but this is what I'm here to do. And they were very, very responsive. This whole Museum Row, Fraser gave me some carpet to put in there. I got some cases from Slugger. I've gotten a lot of Speed Museum. So the family of museums have stepped up, not financially, but supportive, if it makes sense.
Right.
And it's a very competitive field, and we're nonprofit grant. We're not underwritten by millionaires, all those things. But in the sense that the support will come as long as I agitate the support, just like Frederick Douglass said. We're at the point that if this is going to happen, I have to put it in your face to happen.
Right.
It's not going to happen just because one, you're not on the corporate radar. You're just not. And if you are on the corporate radar, you need everybody on our board, on your board, in order to support you.
Right.
Right? So if I allow everybody from your corporate board to come on my board, then how can I tell my story? Because you haven't told a story in corporate America that's fair.
Right.
Am I right? So I have to be even-handed on how I pursue, even from a board standpoint, because I want our true story to be told.
And this falls in the tradition of African storytellers.
Correct.
This is our story gets told generation to generation because there are men and women within individual tribes that are responsible for those stories. Mm-hmm. Just like with our Native American brothers and sisters, they have the same type of hierarchy. Mm-hmm. There are designated storytellers. Mm-hmm. In Louisville, Roots 101 is the designated storyteller for our collective tribe.
That's right.
And the fact that you're not getting the support from the city mm-hmm. that all these other museums are getting, mm-hmm. There's definitely something wrong with that. Mm-hmm. And then I know right now, this is the time when city budgets are being discussed.
Correct.
One of the bones of contention with the mayor and the police department mm-hmm. is that they're in budget discussions. They haven't had a contract since 2018. Mm-hmm. So all of this stuff is hitting the fan at either the wrong time mm-hmm. or the right time, mm-hmm. depending on your perspective.
Right, and to me, it's the right time because if we can just think about this. Mm-hmm. If you look at nonprofits in Louisville, the nonprofits that get the dollars are nonprofit, the corporate sits on the board.
Right.
That's just a fact. That's a fact anywhere in the country, right? Mm-hmm. But here's where the pendulum must change. There's too many good nonprofits in this city that can't get dollars to reach the people they need to reach.
Right.
And those that have the control of dollars control who gets the dollars.
Right.
So that's what the paradigm shift has to be, where not just me as a nonprofit, but 4 or 5 nonprofits in the West End that need a $50,000 budget. Mm-hmm. Well, you need to take $50,000 from the ones you give $1 million to mm-hmm. and supplement these nonprofits. And then we will really have a holistic approach to nonprofits. We don't have a holistic approach to nonprofits. Here in Kentucky, our approach is we give it to ones we're more comfortable with.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And maybe that's just business, but it's not a sustainable business because that's why you got the firecracker you got going there.
Exactly. Once again, we're talking with Lamont Collins of the Roots 101 African American History Museum here in Louisville, Kentucky. We are doing this episode because in the light of the global protests that are going on right now, in protest of police brutality, just basically systemic racism that's going on, not only here in America, but in other countries as well. I was reading recently where Japan is now getting in on the protest. Mm-hmm. So this is definitely a revolution 2.0. We've got more coming up right after this.
This is Mark Gunn Media.
Hit it! Hey, what's up? This is Mark Gunn. I have an audiobook that I collaborated on with author Steve Dust Circle. It's called Before Your First Gig. It's written specifically for the new band or artist just getting started. In about 15 minutes, we will give you the blueprint for setting up to give live performances, marketing your band, and making your music presentable to the masses and the audience that you're going after. Thousands of dollars in sound advice for, get this, $3.99. That's right, $3.99. To download your copy, simply go to my website, markgunmedia.com. That's markgunmedia.com, and the link is on the homepage. It's available from Audible, iTunes, and Amazon. Just click the link that you prefer. As an added bonus, with the proof of purchase, I'll send you the Mark Gunn Media Artist Starter Kit at no additional cost. In it, you'll find all the resources you need to learn about music licensing and publishing, how to register your music with BDS and SoundScan in order to get radio airplay. There's also information about how to become a member of ASCAP and BMI. All the forms you need are included. And finally, the relationship between music and money, how you can cash in. Once you've downloaded your copy of Before Your First Gig, send me an email confirmation by going once again to the website, markgunmedia.com, and hit the Contact Us link. Just give me the name of one of the chapters you heard and any feedback about the book that you may have, and I will send you that Artist Starter Kit. Thousands of dollars worth of information for just under $4. You won't find this anywhere else. Remember, Remember, go to markgunmedia.com and download Before Your First Gig from the link on the homepage. Reach out with your proof of purchase by giving me the name of one of the chapters you heard, and the Mark Gunn Media Artist Starter Kit is yours at no additional cost.
Mark Gunn Media. No hype, no hoopla, just damn good work.
For downloads of this and past episodes and information about all the multimedia services we offer, log on to our website at www.markgunmedia.com. That's markgunmedia.com.
Welcome back to Gunshot Straight from the Hip. I am Mark Gunn, and we are here with Lamont Collins, who is the owner and curator of Roots 101, the African American History Museum here in Louisville. What's the address here, Lamont?
819 West Main Street, right beside Frazier, right across from Slugger Museum.
That is on Museum Row. So this is the area of the city where there are plenty of museums for people to go to, but this is the one that we want to really focus on, basically because of everything that's happening right now. This is going to be an education portal for not only white Americans who need to learn the truth about their history, but for some of us that need a re-education about our history as well. This is where, as you say, some of the healing can begin when you get white people that ask, well, what can I do to make things better? You can educate yourself. We've got, just in this office, this very small office, we've got a myriad of pieces that are absolutely mind-blowing. I'm looking in front of me because, as you know, in addition to some of the stuff that I've already described, there have been a lot of derogatory images over the years that we have seen. And I'm staring in the face of what I can best describe as an Aunt Jemima cookie jar.
Correct.
Okay, where's that from?
That one's probably, it's been in my family for years. And the reason I like derogatory images, and people say, why do you like Mammy dolls and all those things? Because those are images I grew up with. So if I didn't understand how to twist that image, I'd be a twisted man.
Right.
So when you can look at those negative images and find positivity, okay, Mammy, okay, she took care of the kids, good mama.
Okay.
It's okay. She's in front of the pancake box. Here's what I know: she didn't own the company.
Right.
So now I grew up wanting to own my own company, not be on the box.
Right.
So that's why I looked at images. That's original Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's one of the first porcelains that were ever made from Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's him and Eva, right? If you remember the story.
Eva and Uncle Tom. Yes.
And that came out of England back in the 1800s, early 1800s. So that's one of the originals of that.
And again, a lot of the pieces that we're describing, you're going to see photo and video of along with this podcast. And I'm just sitting here thinking about it. And maybe because I'm just acclimated to the atmosphere of the office, is that I can actually see these pieces as you do, with purely a historical context and not get so emotional until, again, I look down at that bag.
They will get you emotional.
And see those chains. Now this is more in my wheelhouse, and maybe
that's old Mike. What we hope to do is when you go through the museum, there's an area that looks like a studio. Okay. And what I'm gonna do with that studio is make it a studio. It will have WLU, all the first black media, and then it will have beside it will have the Louisville Defender and all the black press. So because people don't understand, the reason we came out of the 30s and 40s because the black press agitated everything. We wrote our own stories and published our own newspapers, and we didn't wait for Fox News to tell us our story. So we're gonna have and that mic is part of it, and this is one of my great things, like
the Harriet poster from the movie.
Yeah. And then these are the brothers I come and sit beside every day. I sit beside Malcolm, Martin, and W. Du Bois.
W.E.B. Du Bois, right.
Yeah,
right.
So those are my inspirations when I come in.
And see, the media aspect of Louisville is something that's pretty much in my wheelhouse, because I know that, for the past 70 years, WLU has been a fixture, a mainstay in this community. And when I was growing up, and this was part of the... I guess you would call it my radio DNA.
Correct.
And it's the reason why I did things the way I did them when I was on the air. black radio was all things to black people. We were your conduit for information. It was people like my hero, Petey Green, that when Martin was killed, he was the one that kept the calm in D.C. When we had the riots here a few years ago, I'll never forget it because I'd just come off my honeymoon when I got the word. It was the media, it was your favorite radio personalities that tried to make sense of all those things. And so there is a very rich media history here with the Louisville Defender that's still going on strong. We've got several black media personalities. Chuck Olmstead, God rest his soul.
Yeah, Chuck was good
the man with a hat. Probably the toughest journalist that Louisville's ever had. And on 180 degrees of that spectrum, Dawn G, who is a Louisville mainstay.
I agree.
So she's a piece of Louisville media history as well.
See, I majored in communications at U of L. So when I came up was Jerry Tucker.
Yep.
Remember Jerry Tucker and listen to Randy out of Nashville. That's the kind of thing. So I was always into media communications. That meant so much to me. So I wanted to do a display because communications means so much to us. Because a lot of times, like I tell people, our history is more memories than history. People don't realize that.
Right.
From the time we got to America, we were dealing with memories.
Right.
And what Big Mama did, and that's what we discussed at the table. So we didn't, our history encapsulated from here to here, where white America was going to Scotland, England, and Ireland. We were captured in the memories of time. That's what people don't realize, is that till we grab everything that comes with us, we're stuck in a time capsule.
Wow.
What Big Mama said, what Granddad said, because we wasn't taught our history back to Africa. We wasn't taught about the Moors and the Moor society. We just wasn't taught that. So what I'm trying to say is that we can't allow memories to replace history.
Right.
You follow me?
Follow, definitely. And this is a great place to get that history. So let that history become part of your memories.
Correct.
Because it's bewildering that we don't have the support of the city that this place needs. Now I understand you've got a couple of major events coming up. I know you've got a Juneteenth event coming.
Correct.
Down on Jefferson Square, which is basically the center of our legal district. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're going to do that, and we call it Becoming Better Ancestors. And people wonder why I bring that up, is that we have to become better ancestors. We become better ancestors. Then we become a better community. And when I say better, let's say we talk about memories, let's just talk historical, when Big Mama and them ran the house.
Right.
Big Mama sent 6 kids to HBCUs on a $1,000 budget. How did she do that? But she knew that was a responsibility of her and everybody in the church, everybody on the farm, to send those kids to college.
Right.
That was being a good ancestor, right? We have to have that same mentality. The kids don't come back to our community because they don't have $1,000 to stay in school. I can't tell you how many kids I know personally that families that bought Nikes and everything else couldn't put enough money to send Junior back to college.
Right.
That's crazy. So becoming a better ancestors, we will eliminate that kind of thing in our community. Becoming better ancestors, we will not allow things like this to happen in our community. That we only have nonprofits that has no power, or we would have school systems that's falling apart and not teaching Black history.
Right.
So as better ancestors, we'll correct things that need to be corrected. And by becoming better ancestors, now our children are better ancestors. And then from the African proverbs, we become better people. If the hunter tells a story, the animal has nothing to say.
Right.
You follow?
Right.
So we can't continue to allow the hunter to always tell the story.
Right.
That's ridiculous. And so that's why people like you on radio, and I did an interview with one radio station, and he was talking about music, and he was, now wait a minute, let's just have oxymoron. You playing that music you're talking about.
Right.
Right? So if you're talking about Ice Cube, Ice-T, and all those people, and you damning them because they're sending their kids to private school, you listening and making a living off those records.
Right, you're sitting there.
Yeah, so you're complacent to that.
Right.
So,
you're complicit.
Yeah, complicit. So the question is what happens when the mic goes down and you have airway? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do with that dead airway? Are you going to learn and teach? Right. That's the responsibility of anchors, which they did when we were coming up.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The anchor was always that extra school teacher that was on that mic. And we don't have that today. We don't have, and then the ones that we do have become so political that some of them tell kids don't vote. Now, how can you be in leadership and tell somebody to vote and be irresponsible? So as better ancestors, that can't happen.
Right.
And that's what I'm conditioned is that even if you can't agree to disagree, you have to learn to disagree.
Right.
And everything does not take a compliment. I mean, sometimes the smartest man is the silent man.
Yep.
so sometimes we just have to learn that we don't have to speak.
Yep.
And we don't have to punctuate every idea with a cuss word. Because our ancestors didn't do that.
Right, right.
So the whole thing of what we're doing on Friday is to celebrate the living and honor the dead. That's what it's about. And if we do that, then we should have a heck of a thing. It's not about kill the police.
Right.
It ain't about that. It's about us.
And it's going down at Jefferson Square this Friday, Juneteenth, 4 to 9 p.m. Mm-hmm. And that is at 301 South 6th Street. So that's right up the street from where we are right now.
And we're going to do a march from there to here and then back. So we're going to get I imagine we're going to have a heck of a crowd. I mean, people have been so supportive of what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And what I always say to young people, and people don't get this, is that this is their house.
Right.
This is their house. If they have nowhere to go to say, this belongs to us. And Roots 101 has became that place. And the coolest thing is, we're in the neighborhood we didn't supposed to be in.
Right.
See, it's okay if you build a neighborhood house down off 9th and Broadway. That's what they're telling you to build at.
Right.
But when you can build a house
right in the middle of
Main Street, and you can tell your story on Main Street, and the kids get off the bus and they can see their story, that's the game changer. Not riding all the way downtown, but riding right where your mama and daddy were. My story's being told. And that's why Roots 101 is so important.
And again, you're going to be hearing more about the efforts to get the city involved in this particular enterprise, because it's just as much of a natural resource, a natural treasure as the Louisville Slugger Museum. Anybody can see a story about building a bat, but where can you find the real truth about your real history? Once again, the address for the event on Friday is Jefferson Square. It's at 6th Street, right down the street. It is a free event, and you've had plenty of help with this as well. The folks at the Kentucky Alliance, also the Voters Coalition, the NAACP, and quite a few others have been involved in this.
Yeah, and it's a fundraiser for us also. So we'll use it as a way of raising funds. Our GoFundMe account. If you go to roots-101.org, go to donations. You can go to our GoFundMe Roots 101 African American Museum. But it's about dollars, but it's about our accountability and responsibility to this community. And that's what we're doing.
All right. So once again, if you need the information, we will have it posted on the website. And again, if you're ever in Louisville, Kentucky, this has got to be one of your must stops. I'm telling you. White Louisville, white America. You're asking the questions. What can we do? How can we be of help? You can get yourself an education. And if you are in Louisville, Kentucky, this is the place to start. It's the Roots 101 African American History Museum. The address is 819 West Main Street. And what are the hours typically?
Well, you got to remember we're working
on the grand opening.
Right. So right now it's by appointment only.
Okay.
So if you call me at 502-210-1279 or go to information on the website and we get you in. So that's how we operate right now. Unless someone comes and said, hey, here's enough money to get going.
There you go. There you go. And once again, you're going to be seeing some of the shots of the pieces and the exhibits that Lamont and I talked about on the website as well.
You want me to kind of snapshot what you're going to see in your pictures?
Yeah, kind of sort of.
Okay, right. You'll see Benin century artwork, things that Africans were doing long before Picasso, out of bronze and gold. Matter of fact, we know Picasso took a lot of images from Africans. They already proved that. You'll see that right here. You'll see some pieces out of this world. You'll see 1800 stuff. You'll see sports. You'll see Statue Page. You'll see the Harlem Globetrotters, the Harlem Magicians. You'll see black families out of Louisville. You'll see derogatory images. When we go down to the lower level, I'll walk you through how we're going to put a slave ship in the basement of the museum.
Nice.
And you'll step through the slave ship hull. And as you step out of the slave ship hull, you go in the back door that takes you to the Underground Railroad. And the cool things about that, we just won a grant with Fraser Museum. We'll put a plaque on the back of the building. We know 400 years ago, Africans escaped from here to Ohio River. And this exact same spot.
Wow.
400 years ago, we know that happened.
Wow.
They came through here. Isn't that pretty cool?
And it's kind of serendipitous that you got the building right here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's how powerful this is happening. And that's, and it not just support from the city. The same thing as churches.
Right.
I mean, and I understand churches are in a squeeze just like in the West Covert, no tithes, no offering, I get that. But it's a relationship. We have not made relationships with, I have personal relationship with churches, but we have not had a relationship with the museum with churches yet.
Right.
Or now the Divine Nine have come through and been supportive. So they have been supportive and done some things. So there's some pockets in our community that have stepped up, but are not enough pockets.
Right.
Not enough pockets.
All right. So again, be on the lookout. We'll have links to the images and the video that we're talking about. Lamont Collins, thank you so much for giving me the time to talk about home. And we are going to be seeing a lot more out of this place once we get it up and rolling. So cool. You've been listening to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. Any comments or thoughts that you may have, leave them on the website. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, man.
You've been listening to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and not reflective of any business entity or anyone associated with this broadcast. If you have any comments or want more information on how to be a sponsor, log on to our website at markgunmedia.com or call us at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Thank you for listening.
Mark Gun Media. No hype, no hoopla, just damn good work.